Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Conversations with leading experts in business. I am your host, Mark Stephen Pooler. We have an incredible guest today, Brian Evans. Brian supports his clients to rediscover the power possibility through transformational coaching. I am going to give an official shout out to our show sponsors, Craig Shelley, Beverly Hills Luxury Watches and Fine Jewelry at craigshelley.com. We are streaming live on mspnewsglobal.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we're also on the E360 TV network under Fresh Takes on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, Android TV, and many, many more. So let's bring in our incredible guest, Brian Evans. Brian, welcome to Brilliance Business TV.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Brian, we have got to know each other over the last few months and we have built a great relationship. I know how passionate you are about supporting your clients. You really have some great pearls of wisdom all through your coaching, your transformational coaching. I would just like to go backwards a little bit and just for you to share your background and past that has led you to what you do today in business.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thanks for offering me the opportunity to share that because I, in many ways, I think my journey is similar to many people's journeys. Although I learned from one of my coaches a statement that I've taken to heart, which is behind every transformational leader is a powerful transformational story. And I think what happens is we sometimes live our story without recognizing our story. We live our story without gathering the pearls of wisdom from our stories, and we live our stories without sharing those pearls of wisdom. And so my story is similar to many others in terms of the way that I came to the transformational coaching work that I do is through challenges, through failures, if you will. I was a young executive that was overworking but underskilled in terms of understanding how to be effective as a leader. And how to connect with people in a way that was really meaningful for them that would create a meaningful success. And what happened was all I knew how to do was continue working harder and harder rather than looking for guidance, having guidance and support in creating my skills in a way that I could support others. And what happened out of that was I was being groomed to be a president of a nonprofit organization. And over time, the management lost faith in me and I was actually fired from that position, which was definitely a setback. It was definitely a challenge. And yet what I found was that it was an opportunity, an opening for me to go into other work. And so I started working for a company called Franklin Covey. And it was co-founded, or rather it was co-managed by Dr. Stephen R. Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And during the time when I worked there, I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Covey and to ask him questions and to learn from him about a subject that was new to me, which was executive coaching. And what I realized, Mark, was that was the missing puzzle piece that I had when I was working as an executive. I was working very hard, but I didn't have anyone to guide me and support me and to help me see possibilities differently. And I learned from Dr. Covey the power of coaching to do that and recognized this was what I wanted to do with my life. Was to help others to see possibilities beyond their blind spots, to change their lens just enough that they could see what they weren't seeing before, learn from what they had termed a success or a failure, and in turn become more adept at seeing people and seeing possibilities in ways that they hadn't seen them before. And so that led me on the path to becoming a transformational coach. And when I use the term transformational coach, it applies just as relevantly in business as it does in the personal lives of my clients. And so there's really no distinction for me. We each have the power to transform how we do what we do and how we're being in doing what we're doing. And that's what I lead and support my clients to do.
I like what you said, Brian, of behind every leader, there's a great story. And that's so true. You find some of the greatest leaders have got some of the most challenging stories and backgrounds. And that has really given them the strength and those skills to then go on to lead others to really get through their challenging times, to then create their own leaders as well.
Yes.
And also, thank you for sharing. And what you said, you got fired from a job and it was a setback, but that sort of sent you on a launch pad then to do what you are doing today. So that is a really important lesson, that sometimes we feel like things are setbacks and they are challenging when they happen. But then when you connect the dots backwards at a later date, you realise that things do happen for a reason, don't they, Brian?
Absolutely, 100%. One of the sort of core tenets that I share with all of my clients is to ask themselves the questions: what is the gift in the struggle? There's always a gift in any struggle that we're going through, and as long as we're breathing and our heart is beating, we'll face challenges. So the answer is not to avoid challenges, but know that challenges are coming. And to recognize that in each challenge, there is a gift. There's something that I'm here to gain. I'm here to learn from this experience. And so when I come to any of the challenges I'm facing through that lens, then it has meaning what I'm going through, the experience that I'm going through. The common phrase that's used often is you win or you learn. And winning feels a lot better, but we won't always win. But we can always learn. And so the way that we do that is attuning our vision to what is the gift in the struggle. And when I look for it and I find it, then I can let go of the challenge and know that I'm taking something away from the experience that will help me and help others as I move forward.
I like that, Brian. You either win or you learn. And that's a little bit of a mindset shift to, you could either look at it as you win or you lose, or what real leaders do is they look at it and say, well, you either win or you learn. Both ways you will grow. Tell us a little bit about your business, Brian, and all the amazing work that you do with your clients.
Well, I absolutely love being a coach, being a transformational guide, working with such a wide variety of individuals. I've been fortunate to work with everyone from high-level executives at international companies to stay-at-home moms and pops that are trying to create their way in the world. And the through line, Mark, that ties all of these together is that everyone has a vision for what they want for their life. And it can be very difficult to recognize in any moment that I'm not who I want to be or where I want to be in my life, whether that's as an executive leading others, whether that's as an individual with a grand idea, but don't know the roadmap of how to have that grand idea come into reality. Whether it's someone navigating a health challenge or relationship challenge, a financial challenge, certainly all of these have come forward in the last year and a half as the work for each of us to do to find not only the peace of mind within ourselves as we go through the challenges, but also to rediscover that possibility that we live not in a world of fixing and doing, But in a world of dreaming and allowing the vision to come forward, allowing the possibility to come forward, yes, it takes hard work to actualize that vision, actualize those possibilities. But if we fail to dream what those possibilities are, then we're guaranteed that we will not be in the mindset, as you mentioned, of win or learn. We'll be in the mindset of win or lose. And we are predisposed to focus on loss over gain, loss over progress. And so some of the work that I do with my clients are, number one, what is your vision? If you don't know where it is that we're going in whatever facet, whatever lens you're traveling that, whether it's personal or business, then how will we know if we're moving towards it or not? And so establish the vision, live in the vision, rooted in the vision, and then create the structures and the strategies that actualize those. But it begins with the vision as the foundation. And then there's always the mindset work that goes along with this, because we will run into all of the things in our blind spot, our fears, our opinions, our programmings, our prejudices, our insecurities. That is part of our life. That is part of our human experience. And so having someone, and for my clients, having me to support them in identifying the vision, building the strategies and the structures, and then working with the mindset challenges that come along the way, that's proven invaluable. That has turned lead to gold, an alchemy for so many people. And if I can offer one thing, Mark, that for your listeners and your readers, that will make the biggest difference in your life, it is simply this: to destigmatize the word failure. We have so much energy around this word failure. I failed to do something. And so I would say destigmatize it, because if you're not failing, you're not attempting. You're not really striving to experience something great in your life. And to me, every single human being with a heartbeat has greatness within them that they are longing to create in some way, shape, or form. You can do that, but you will not do that without experiencing failure. So destigmatize that word and recognize that failing is a matter of failing forward into your next step towards where you want to go.
We're speaking the same language, Brian. I have interviewed a lot of leaders like yourself, a lot of successful business leaders, and they all know the power of a vision, connecting with your future self, your vision for the future, and really connecting with that. I know at the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, sometimes you're more connected to what you're trying to get away from, your past. Now in my journey, I'm not connected to my past at all, Brian. I'm so connected to the future and the vision. I can't stress enough how important having your vision and knowing your vision is. And all successful people talk about this. And also at the start of my journey as well, sometimes you're that scared of failure or getting the word no, that can really hold up your journey in business and your personal life, dating, whatever it is you're trying to achieve. This fear of failure. Now, I don't ever consider failure anymore, Brian. I'm so into my personal development. But there are still so many people in this world, Brian, do you agree, that don't have a vision? They probably don't think about failure because they're not taking much action to even get failure. But I agree with you that you must not be worried about failure. It's so important and it holds so many people's dreams back. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely, Mark. And I think one of the things to recognize is that we have each been programmed to the sense of that anything that goes counter to our expectations can be and should be considered a failure. And I think that that's where really the root takes place is in the expectation that things will look a certain way or be a certain way. I mean, we see this in business all the time, as if profits or action should be a constant, arrow constantly going up, whereas there is no rhythm in the world that remains constantly in an elevated state. And yet the expectation is that business results will always be increasing. And if there's a dip in any way, for any reason, beyond my control or within my control, then somehow there's been a failure. There's some correction that needs to be made. Whereas that's really just a rhythm of things, that things expand and contract. That's the way that the entire universe created itself, was through expansion and contraction. And so there's a rhythm to things, but our expectations go counter to that rhythm. There's a tenet in the worlds of philosophy that states that the root of our suffering is our expectations, not the actual experiences themselves, but the expectations that things will look a certain way, and if they don't look that way, then somehow something has failed. And what that does is it turns a very blind and jaded eye to all of the possibilities that have opened up out of that quote-unquote failure. And so I am, one of the tenets that I share with my clients is the term, I am the architect of my suffering. And people say, well, why would I claim that I'm the architect of my suffering? And my answer to that, Mark, is if you're the architect of your suffering, then you are also the architect of your freedom. And so if my suffering is caused by my expectations, I do not wait for the conditions to change. I look at my expectations and I change my expectations. I change the way that I view the world, the way that I choose to view possibility, and in that I create greater freedom for myself. So yes, 100%, every single human will have an association with the word failure. I'm seeking to redefine that for so many people, that your failure is not a thing that stops you. It's a failure is a thing that births you.
It's a great, great way to look at the world, Brian, and more people need to look at the world this way. And I like what you said as well. That's kind of taking responsibility, isn't it, Brian? As you have to take the good and the bad and take responsibility for all of it. And that's what true leaders do.
Yes.
We're going to a commercial break, Brian, so stay where you are. We've got lots to chat about. Thank you, everyone, for watching part 1 of Brilliance Business TV. We are joined with Brian Evans. He has shared how he was fired from his job, which was a setback, but that led him onto a whole new path to what he does today in the world of transformational coaching. We have shared the importance of having a vision. We have shared why we should not be scared of failure. Join us after the commercial break. Welcome back to Brilliance Business TV. We are joined with the incredible Brian Evans. He has shared lots of wisdom. We have talked about the power of having a vision. We have talked about failure. Brian, welcome back to Brilliance Business TV.
Thank you, Mark.
So we've had a really, really testing year and a half. Don't quote me on the exact timeline of that. The world has changed really, really fast, Brian. Probably the fastest change we have seen in a long time. Literally overnight, there were big changes. What are some of the challenges that your clients have been facing through these testing times, Brian?
Well, I think what characterizes this experience as different than a lot of experiences many of us have had in our lifetime, Mark, is the universality of the fact that there's not a place on Earth that hasn't been touched by the experiences of the last year and a half, between varying states of shutdown, between people having to face their own health as a priority, whether it's by virtue of a healing experience having to do with the pandemic, or whether it's just the concern or fear or anxiety that's been created by not only the actual virus, but also all of the conditions and necessary limitations around that. The mental emotional health that many of us have had to navigate in ways that we hadn't had to navigate before. And what I share with my clients and others is that, again, what is the gift in the struggle? Certainly, this is a universal struggle with varying individual expressions. So even you and I, being in the US and the UK, we face different conditions having to do with this global pandemic. Individually, based on beliefs, based on experiences, we have different individual experiences around the pandemic. But I think there is some universality. I've often said that probably for the first time since perhaps World War II, this is the first global event where no matter who you are, where you are, your state of a financial abundance, it matters not. There's a touching point here. And so because of that, we can also kind of crowdsource solutions for one another, because we're all having this common experience. And so some of the things that I'm seeing have to do with personal anxiety, whether it's individuals wondering how is it going to be in order to go back to normal, whatever that normal looks like. How am I, after a year and a half, going to experience going back to my work, going back to my workplace, where now I'm suddenly moving from being in my family shelter of my home to being surrounded by 100 or 200 people around me? How am I going to feel about that? How am I going to care for others while I'm also now being pulled in many different directions? How am I going to be in my life now versus how I was in my life a year and a half ago? Because the truth of the matter, Mark, is that for many, many people, they were running on a hamster wheel as fast as they could, and then they were forced to slow down and reconsider their life that had been on autopilot before things shut down. And many people, and we're certainly seeing this in the States, perhaps we're seeing it in other parts of the world as well, as things start to open up, individuals are recognizing that they don't want to get back on that hamster wheel any longer, that they want their life to be much different than it was before this started a year and a half ago, that this interruption actually gave them the time to slow down and stop and listen to themselves, and to recognize that what wasn't working before and what they're unwilling to go back to and engage in again. And that's part of my work with individuals, to help them rediscover who are you now, not who were you before, because there's no going back in transformation.
Yes. You've mentioned some great points there, actually. Fear was definitely a big thing of the pandemic. You also touched on mental health as well. But the big one, I think you got spot on. People are changing, and for me, I realised I was all work. And like you mentioned earlier, Brian, you help people on a personal level and business. both of those have to be in balance to be successful, Brian. And I think a good thing of the pandemic, it did make people reflect on their working lives. And myself now, I try to take weekends off and have family time and friend time. And I think you nailed that spot on. People don't want to go back to the way that they were before. What are some of the solutions and possibilities, Brian?
Well, there's really three that I'll share with you, Mark. The first is, and you touched on it a moment ago, is that we had been looking at our work life and our personal life as separate. That somehow we transformed into a worker, whether that's a business owner, an executive, an employee, someone who's volunteering or working in a nonprofit, and our identity shifted and they were in opposition. Okay, here is what I do, but who am I in what I do? And so I have heard a lot from my clients and from others just in conversation about the distance that many were feeling from themselves by virtue of what they were doing, that they had dehumanized themselves, and in turn, businesses had dehumanized them to focus instead on what it is that they offered, what it is that they were bringing. And so I think one of the insights of the pandemic is the rediscovery of our humanity. We slowed down enough to catch up with ourselves, to recognize how amazing we are as human beings first, and then human doing second. And so one of the challenges that I'm seeing is people's concern about dehumanizing themselves again if they move back into the same structures. The mirror of that, Mark, is that from the employer or the business owner side of it, the business is very, very afraid of uncertainty. And there's nothing but uncertainty right now. And so one of the things that I work with my leaders on are how to destigmatize for themselves uncertainty and recognize that uncertainty is just where we are right now. Now, there's the head in the sand approach and going, okay, well, when everyone comes back, it'll be just like it was before and I can just autopilot and go back. That's not going to happen. And so how do you prepare within uncertainty for what you can expect will reasonably happen? That strategy. Pretending that it's going to go back the way it was 18 months ago is not strategy. That's self-deception for many leaders. Instead, recognize that humanity has been reestablished. And so what are the conversations, what are the conditions, what are the environments that must be created for that humanity to continue at the forefront? Because the humanity is the key to success, not the wishful thinking of what was not working in the past that we called working. And so that's what I think are some of the biggest challenges I see from both the individual and the business side is how do I navigate this uncertainty? And my strongest suggestion would be you can do it alone, but it is harder. And so choose to work with someone who can support you, lead you, and guide you, reflect you, and open up questions and conversations so that you're not alone in dealing with the uncertainty, that you can actually discover the gold that's in that uncertainty.
Beautifully said, Brian. And I do think some people still do feel like things are going to go back to the old way. And we all know we're never going back there. The world is a totally new place now. And I think there is so much positivity with the new change as well. Yes, there's been a lot of challenges and a lot of negative things happen, but there's so much positive moving forwards, and it's about embracing the new and doing the best we can in these new times. Now, everyone is a leader, Brian. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to lead a team. and we are all leading our own lives every single day. So the results you get from getting up, brushing your teeth, going out to work, we all lead our own lives. So I truly know we're all leaders. Leadership is really important moving forwards through this pandemic, and you're an excellent leader. You build up leaders as well. What are some of the qualities you think the 21st century leaders need to be effective, Brian? I know it's a big question.
It is a big question, but it's an essential question, Mark. And what I've recognized in my work is we're now, a fifth of the way through the 21st century. And so there's definitely enough experience and data to show that how we thought and acted in the 20th century has changed. It's evolved. And one of the reasons that I use the term transformational coach is that transformation occurs on the individual and the collective level. So, and one of the hallmarks of transformation is there's no going back. When you have the caterpillar become the butterfly, the caterpillar can't decide midstream, I'm going to go back and just live my life as a caterpillar. The transformation is happening. And so we follow it to the outcome, which is the butterfly. So what's happening with each of us in leadership in our life is that we're recognizing that one quality of leadership is what we talked about in terms of the ability to see things not only as they are, but what possibilities exist beyond what I'm seeing right now. What is the gift in the struggle? What is the gold in the lead that can be transformed through alchemy? What is it that is coming forward now, as opposed to deceiving myself into thinking something different would be better? And so it's managing the expectations that we talked about earlier and recognizing that here's where I am right now. What good is present here? One of the, another key tenet that I teach my coaching clients, I share with them, is to ask themselves the question, what if there's nothing wrong here? What if there's nothing wrong here? And that simple question turns our intention, turns our attention, and turns our intuition to look for the good that's present. So asking leaders to recognize that their work is not to solve anything. Their work is to observe what's present, to discover the gold, and to utilize that gold in order to create good for others. I think a second thing that's happening with a lot of leaders, which I mentioned a couple of moments ago, is to rediscover, recognize, treasure, and utilize humanity. All of the things, business is not a thing. It's not a single monolithic thing. It's a collection of individuals. It's a collection and a reflection of humanity. And so centering humanity at the nucleus of what we do, both individually as well as collectively, what good can come, what human good can come from me being the greatest leader that I can. And greatest leaders does not mean most influential leader. Greatest leader, as we define influential in today's society, instead it's what greatness can I elicit from others so that they are in turn greatened. New word for you, greatened. Because greatness is already within ourselves. It's coming into alignment with that. It's coming into expression with it. How can I greaten someone else? And when we do that, we see them as they are, but we see what's inside of them, the magnificence inside of them. And we place that humanity at the center of how we lead others. When we do that, and I guarantee you, Mark, I've seen it over and over and over, the leaders that do that experience success in all of the ways that we define it, in ways that are unimaginable, because they've recognized that it's not about the thing, it's about the people. And so the leaders of the 21st century recognize, treasure, expand, and greaten the humans around them.
I like that word, Brian, greatened. And also, I like that question. What if there's nothing wrong here? Because sometimes you can criticize the work that you're doing. You can look at all the problems. And I like that because sometimes there is nothing wrong. And when you switch to that mindset, you're focusing on the positive. And we know what you focus on, Brian, does grow. So just great pearls of wisdom. We're coming up to the last few minutes of the show, Brian. I just want to quickly touch on Navigating the Clickety-Clack Volume 2, the best-selling book project that you was part of. Now, this book has co-authors Dr. Joe Vitale, Adam Markle, Marie Diamond, Keith Leon, and many co-authors. You were one of them. Just tell us a little bit about the chapter in your book, please.
So Navigating the Clickety-Clack, which for your viewers, this is what the book looks like.
Available on Amazon.
Yes. Volume 2 was as much a gift to myself as it was a gift to others, because it helped me to recognize on my journey what are some of the things that I are essential, have been essential for me that I can share with others. And I'll share 2 of them. The first is the power of being willing to ask for and receive help.
Yes.
The readers you can read my story in there, but it's a story, as I started out by saying, it's behind every transformational leader is a powerful transformational story, and we all have struggled. But what I discovered in the particular struggle or clickety-clack moment that I shared in the book is there was no way for me to manipulate or somehow dance my way out of the experience, the challenge that I was having. The only way to do that was for me to surrender and allow myself to ask for and receive help. And I always put those, Mark, as 2 separate actions. There's asking for help, and then there's receiving it. And so for those who are feeling stuck, feeling like they don't know how to move towards where they want to go, the answer is always ask for and receive help. And what you'll find is that there's so many people who are willing to help. There's so many people, even in our immediate circle, that are willing to say, yes, how can I help you? What do you need? So asking for and receive help. The second piece is that we have spent so much of our lives in this space of fixing problems, solving problems rather than creating possibilities. And that there is a very different mindset when I solve a problem or I'm looking to fix a problem versus when I'm looking to expand and create possibilities, a totally different mindset. And the difference is, Mark, that creating possibilities, when I'm in that creative mind, it can solve problems. It can create solutions for me that solve the problems. But when I'm in a fixative mindset, I will never, ever, ever create a new possibility. So those are 2 of the things that I would share that people can immediately use to shift the trajectory of their life. If you're in crisis, you can move it to a peace of mind. If you're at peace of mind, but you want more, you can utilize those 2 strategies to really move yourself in the direction that you want to go.
Navigating the Clickety-Clack Volume 2. I would encourage everyone to get on Amazon, get a copy, and really, really study this book. There's so many great co-authors. You are bound to connect with one of them, and it can really help you to move forwards in business and in life. Brian, I have really enjoyed having a conversation with you. Now, you can connect with Brian at brianevanscoach.com. What kind of person, Brian, would you like to reach out to you? Who is your perfect person that may be watching today? Who is the ideal person to reach out to you?
Well, I work with individuals and organizations. So if someone is looking to create possibilities, transformational possibilities personally, I love working with individuals. For those who are leaders of organizations that want to perhaps shift the way that they are going to lead or coming into the next phase of our life together, I work with organizations around the world to do that. And so either of those are fine. But what's most important is, and if you're listening to this point or you recognize that I have a certain style as a transformational coach, it is very grounded and it's a grounded style, but it also lifts you higher into what's possible. And so the clients that I'm looking for are those who are looking to create grounded results while also lifting themselves higher than just the surface that we've been living under. I've had clients on 5 continents. I would love to work with a business owner in Africa as a homage to my personal ethnic roots, to work with a business owner to create success there. And of course, Mark, my one ask is if there's anyone in Antarctica so that I can get that 7th continent in, I would be happy to coach someone in Antarctica. So those are a couple of the types of clients and individual clients that I would love to work with.
Putting it out in the universe, yes, Brian. Absolutely. It's sure to come back to you. That's Brian at brianevanscoach.com. Be sure to connect with Brian. Brian, I have thoroughly enjoyed having you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on to Brilliance Business TV.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for inviting me. It's my absolute pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for watching Brilliance Business TV. What a show today with Brian Evans. He has shared how he got fired from his job, which was a major setback, but then that sent him onto a whole new journey. Today, he is a transformational coach. We have discussed the importance of having a great vision. We have discussed failure. We have discussed the pandemic and tips for leaders, how to really lead themselves out of this pandemic to be effective. Brian, thank you once again for an incredible show and conversation. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Until next time, bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.